This is the Convo by Design Icon Registry episode for April 2025. I love these Icon Registry episodes for a number of reasons, and at the top is the opportunity to go back and re-listen to some of these episodes to show some gratitude for those who have made the time to share their stories, process, and the work with us here on Convo by Design. These icons transcend design and architecture, and their work is both inspiring and transformative. This episode is dedicated to and celebrates the creatives, all who make up EYRC architects: Ehrlich, Yanai, Rhee, Cheney. The names on the door, and all those behind the badge who craft such extraordinary work. Over the past 12 years, Stephen Ehrlich, Takashi Yanai, Matthew Cheney, Bryn Garrett, all have appeared on the show in various forms. It could be live at the EYRC architecture headquarters in Los Angeles, on site at a project in Rancho Mirage, California. It could be online via Zoom or live at the West Edge Design Fair. Their work is wonderful. It's creative and forward-thinking. They're creatives. They're thoughtful, immensely talented, and open to sharing their talents and a willingness to give back to the design community. Amazing. And for these reasons, they are the Convo by Design Icon Registry inductees for April 2025. In celebration of them and their accomplishments, I'm replaying two conversations for you this week. Presented by Pacific Sales, a Best Buy company, partner of Convo by Design, and friends to the designers and architects who trust them with their business. First, you're going to hear my very first conversation with Takashi Yanai from 2016. And then you're going to hear my chat with Stephen Ehrlich from one of my very favorite site visits. And it was actually the first live remote I think we did on the show. It was from Ridge Mountain in Rancho Mirage, an incredible project. It was recorded in March of 2018. I hope you enjoy listening to these as much as I did recording them. Such a blast. Stephen, Takashi, and everyone at EYRC, thank you. The entire team, for your incredible work, for the manner in which you put up this architecture firm and the work that the firm does. It's bold, it's brave, it's amazing work. It inspires me, and I'm sure it inspires countless others. So thank you, and you're going to hear it all right after this. The most important word in the design industry today is service. Product, incredibly important. Price, important. Selection, incredibly important. But stellar service is the premier idea that can make all the difference in the success of any project. This is how design professionals like you demand great service for your projects. And you get your favorite brands in one place with expert, knowledgeable, and non-commissioned professionals to help you specify the right product for each of your projects and get the best price. Non-commissioned, that is incredibly important. And at Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home, a Best Buy company, that means their only incentive is your satisfaction. Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home, a Best Buy company, has just that with over 60 years of service in Southern California. Pacific Sales is your destination for exploration, advice, inspiration, all the best brands, great prices, the best in the industry when it comes to service, and you know it's reliable. You know that you are going to get predictable results, reliable results every time. And now you have the Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home team to help you with their Pro Rewards program, which is a trade program unlike any you've ever experienced before. Earn 3% in Best Buy e-gift cards or 2.5% in a reward check for every qualified and delivered sale, in addition to special trade pricing, exclusive offers, access to exclusive special events, and so much more that I can't even begin to try and list it all here. And here's the cherry on top. Access to exclusive builder trade incentives from top brands and the stellar service you deserve from a company that has been serving the industry for over 60 years. Now, terms and conditions apply to the Pro Rewards program and builder trade incentives. So visit a Pacific sales expert at a showroom today for full details and learn how you can unlock additional savings and benefits. Don't miss out on the opportunity to work with the best of the best. Visit Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home today and elevate your projects to new heights.
So tell me something. How did you find architecture and design as your calling? How did the in most creative endeavors, the theory is that you don't really find them, that they kind of find you. How did it happen?
That's a good question. Well, no, I'm one of those kids who kind of knew. I mean, there are a couple callings. Like I love photography. I like literature, but discovered very early that I was a good fan of literature, but I was not a good writer. But architecture is one of those things I was always, I really was drawn to from the time I was a little kid. And, somewhat a meandering path. I studied literature in college, and I did some other things. I was an editor for an architecture magazine, but somehow I always knew that one day I would wind up in design and being an architect.
Okay, so was it frustrating for you, being that you love literature, that you weren't as comfortable writing, or that you felt you weren't as good at writing as you wanted to be? Was that frustrating?
No, not frustrating. I mean, I think it was just a path. So I had a poetry teacher, a very good poet, and he used to say that poets understood space better than architects. And everyone loved that line in class, but I knew that was not true, and I knew that conversely that architects were better poets than poets. So I think it was part of the road to affirming for me how important design was.
So it's funny too, you also mentioned photography. Your Instagram site is fantastic, and I'm going to get to that later. How long have you been on Instagram though?
A couple of years, maybe 3 years now. Yeah.
What would you say you're more passionate about, architecture or photography?
It's definitely architecture. I mean, photography, that was an alternate course for me. So I was offered a scholarship at an art school straight out of high school. And I could tell that my parents, although they were very low pressure, would let me do whatever I wanted to do. They weren't comfortable with the art school direction, so I ended up going to college. And starting out in architecture school, I actually dropped out of architecture school, graduated in literature. So photography was always there as like this other life I could have had. And Instagram was kind of a great thing for me because it brought back that opportunity to kind of explore that part of my interest.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, for those who want to find it, it's T_Yanai, YANAI. What's interesting is going through it, there's a little bit of everything. You don't seem to have one particular thing. There are empty scapes, there are people, there are seemingly mundane landscapes, there's busy, do you have a favorite style, or do you just like being able to put up whatever you fancy at the moment?
Yeah, I would like to say it's whatever I fancy, but I think there is a thread, and the thread is that it's my point of view. So that's what I love about Instagram. It's, there are people who are really focused and they have their blinders on. It's very niche, but the people I enjoy on Instagram are the ones that you kind of get to know through their photographs. So that's what I try to do, is try to kind of express myself, not like in words, but in visuals. Of course, architecture is a part of it. I show some of our recent projects and job sites and things like that, but my kids are a part of it. The art that I'm looking at, or a book I'm reading, or the travels I'm on, that's all part of it. So I think that's the theme. It's an expression, a visual expression, or a visual sketchbook of what I'm up to. Yeah.
That's great. Do me a favor. The mic a little bit higher, like right here, just so we don't pick up as much background noise.
Okay.
What is your view? You joined the firm
Yeah.
in 2004.
I joined the firm in 2002.
2002.
Yeah.
Okay. So clearly you've been in Los Angeles for quite some time. You've seen the landscape, the architecture landscape here. What is your thought when you look at Los Angeles as a whole? Not the particular areas, the hotbeds for architecture here,
Right.
but when you look at LA
Yeah.
as a whole, from a professional standpoint, from an artistic aesthetic, what do you think?
Well, a couple things come to mind when you ask that. I mean, one thing is I think LA is sort of at epicenter right now in the 21st century. It's on the West Coast, so we're almost part of Asia. We're part of the Pacific Rim, call it. So I think the center of culture and, is that too noisy?
That's okay.
So I think Los Angeles is sort of an epicenter in the 21st century, right? It's on the Pacific Rim. We're closer to Asia than New York is. So it's a melting pot of cultures that have like a huge impact on world culture, global culture today. So that's part of it. And the other part of it I love about LA is there's a long history of architecture and design, cutting edge design, experimental design here, especially when it relates to houses, because that's what I do. I specialize in houses. So LA is the city of houses, right? I think the statistic is something like there are 500,000 houses here. And the majority of LA is zoned for single family dwellings. And there's a long history of architects coming here as young men and women. And that's the first commission they get, is working on residential. So I think that's very special and very particular to LA.
So, help me understand this as a partner in charge of the residential studio here. Is that to you? Is that exclusively single family?
No, we do multifamily too. And
Okay.
I'm interested in that. I'm interested in tract housing. Like, we don't do that, but I would love the opportunity to do that. There have been some great things, like all the tracts out in Palm Springs, for instance, all the modern mid-century tracts out there. Now, I'm interested in spaces for living. So whether that's multifamily, whether that's a tower, like we did a condo tower in Taipei recently, or a single-family house. It's all related.
Well, I think that's the point too. Is it's amazing out here. It feels to me like LA is in the midst of this totally transformational period, because the city was built on single-family tract homes, and the way it's developing now is more multi-use, more multifamily. It seems to be there's a propensity for structures to start going up again instead of just out wide, which is dramatically changing the skyline. It's changing the landscape. LA is changing a lot in that regard. Do you think, with your role here, that you view it differently? Because when you're watching the change, you're seeing something. You're seeing the landscape change from an architectural standpoint. What do you think of the way that LA is developing now? Do you think it's being done the right way, or do you think it's being done haphazard?
Well, it's haphazard,
Right.
which is always the way LA has worked. I mean, it's the Wild West in many ways still, even today, even though we're kind of entering, I agree with you, kind of a golden period for LA. I mean, this could be the best period that we're living through right now. But it's always been haphazard, and I think that pioneer spirit is important here. So I would never want that to go away. And there are good things and there are bad things. There are terrible things that get built, and they're neighborhoods where I kind of cringe at how they developed, quite frankly. But there are always, even within that, there's good stuff going on, and then there are neighborhoods where a lot of great stuff is going on. The pendulum swings one way or the other, like Venice, California, for instance. Long time sort of center of artist culture in LA. And there was always this back and forth, the gentrification, and then, something, it would slide backwards for a while. But it kind of got over the hump, right? And it blossomed into this amazing place. But now it's pricing the artist element out. It's so desirable, so expensive to live there. There's a lot of great architecture happening there, but maybe true artists or younger people can't afford to live there anymore. So that's another challenge of LA. I mean, the climate's so great here. Everyone wants to be here. Neighborhoods, when they kind of assert themselves and become these great places to live, they've become expensive. So, I mean, that's one challenge I think we have as a city.
Yeah, it's interesting too because this past weekend took a trip down south with the family, and found our way to Irvine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's one of these master planned community.
Yeah.
It was designed to look this way.
Right.
And because of that, everything it's a cookie cutter city. It's got a great university. It's got everything that you could want from a city. It's got everything there.
Right.
Except a soul.
Right.
There's no soul there. So when you look at a job, when you look at a particular job,
mm-hmm.
do you take into account sort of the environment, the city that it's in? Will you look at the neighbors? Will you look at the properties surrounding it?
Right.
How do you approach a new opportunity?
Right. Well, I always look at the surroundings. That's a huge part of it. So, our architecture or our design, it's not cookie cutter, and it doesn't have a set palette of materials or set language. Each house or each project is custom, bespoke, tailored, however you want to put it, very specific to the particular aspects of the place and the clients, the people. So whether it's like a suburban tract in Irvine that may be really ultra homogeneous in some ways, there's something there that we can latch onto and find something positive about or comment on, that we would spin in a creative way and then make our project unique for the client. We don't want to stand out in a bad way, but we want to, be distinct and make a statement and be special in any case, but always contextual. Always trying to riff and understand the context that we're in.
Are there any specific lines or individual aspects of your work that you always incorporate? Are there any particular things that you always incorporate in your work?
Well, just what I was talking about, that we always are looking at the context and always kind of trying to understand the culture of the people. When I say culture, it might be not ethnic culture or where they're from, but what they do. Like, you might be a surfer or a fashion designer or an ad exec or whatever it is. There's a culture related to what you are as a client. I think one thing we do is we kind of creatively look at how to use the land. So, we don't go by convention. Like in the suburb, it might be the convention of having a front lawn and a house and then a backyard. But we'll question that. We might push the house to the side. So the side yard all of a sudden becomes this yard that connects the front to the back. Another thing we do is, I think all our architecture is related inside to outside. So we're embracing the outdoors because we can do that in Southern California. So there's this strong connection between interior space and exterior space. So I would say, those are some threads that run through the work.
Something else that I've noticed in the work that you do is there seems to be a specific approach to designing for the quality of life, which I think is really interesting, because it's not just designing a domicile. It's not just designing a box with other boxes where someone can live.
Right.
Because we live so differently now
mm-hmm.
than we used to. You take into account a city like Los Angeles, where, I grew up here, and when I was a kid, it took 30 minutes to get anywhere in LA proper. It's at least double that now.
Right.
It takes much longer. And because of that, there are other things. Most people don't work a traditional 5-day work week.
Right.
Most people are working some part, all of their time from their homes.
Yeah.
So the home has to be designed differently. Has that changed the way that you view a residential property?
Yes and no. So the program, like you say, is very unique to each client. So every client, no client fits into that stereotypical sort of demographic of, what do you call it, the nuclear family, right, with two kids, and maybe today both parents are working, but oftentimes, the mom is working, the dad is not, or oftentimes they're both not working sometimes. Um, so yeah, the programs are kind of all over the place, and that's what makes it fun and unique. So for example, we don't really do developer work, maybe on occasion, but typically we don't. And the primary reason is because it's not interesting to us to design for like an imaginary, hypothetical, every family, right? We'd rather design for you or for this person or for that person so that we can have those sort of idiosyncratic spaces or qualities in a space that a particular person wants versus trying to guess what the average buyer is going to want.
Is there more of a challenge to you in trying to, I don't want to say retrofit because that's not what it is, but to alter an existing residence and turn it into something different, or starting from scratch?
That's interesting you asked that question. For a long time, we would not do renovations because there are always compromises. But lately, we've been doing them more, and I think that's also something that's we have to face in LA. Like for a long time, like you're saying, we could just keep going and finding new lots, or we would just tear something down. But more and more, there were structures worth saving. For instance, we did an addition to a Neutra house, for instance, and obviously we're not going to tear down Neutra house, but nor should that house be denied the opportunity to become something that is living and relevant in the 21st century, right? So lately we've been looking at remodels more. It all depends, but if the bones are there, for instance, that's great. And the other consideration is that the site might be amazing, and that's the only way we're going to be able to take on a project. So a client and a site might be so unique and so special that we'll do it, even though we prefer to do ground up.
When you and I met, we were also talking to Ron Woodson and Jamie Rummerfield, and they have a new project about saving properties. Tell me your thoughts on the wrecking ball, because it's interesting. Part of the beauty of architecture is that it's always changing.
Right.
It's always developing. There are always going to be new schools of thought and new ways to do things. By the same token, there is, in many cases, and there should be, a desire to protect truly treasured properties.
Right.
Where's the line?
Yeah, it's a fuzzy line.
Yeah.
And, I think it's got to move around. Like, you can't draw that line in the sand and expect it not to move. So, and it's really subjective, too. So I have friends who actually bought a Gregorian house in the Gregorian tract in Mar Vista. I've been wanting a house there for a long time myself. And this guy is an architect at a prominent architecture firm in LA, and he's having the hardest time because the association doesn't want him to touch it. But if there was someone out there qualified to do something to it, it would be my friend. But, so that's a line in the sand that should be a little blurrier. And then other times, masterpieces that maybe are not in the spotlight for whatever reason currently are too easily sort of tossed and mowed down. So yeah, it's a tough, there's always going to be this back and forth negotiation. There'll be periods where we're too conservative, we're not allowing any progress to occur, and then there'll be times where progress that's unimpeded is dangerous, and we'll look back upon it sadly.
Yeah, it's interesting too. It's one of those situations. There is no perfect answer to it. Here in Southern California, you have the issue too. I forgot whose house it was. There was a celebrity's home. I want to say it was within the last 2 years, where it should be saved. There was nothing architecturally different about the property.
Right.
It was a tract home from the 50s in Los Angeles.
Right.
But it happened to be the childhood home of a major celebrity. So do you save it? I don't know. There's no hard and fast rule for why you save something. By the same token, you'll have homes built in the 1970s, the mid to late 70s. Perhaps most, if not all of them, should be torn down because
Right.
because of the quality standards within which they were being built.
Yeah.
There was a transition from the homes that were being built in the 50s
Right.
and the quality of materials and workmanship that was applied at that time.
Yep.
Right? And then into the mid 70s, early 80s, where it was just let's put up as many as quickly as we can.
Yeah, a lot of bad homes. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting, though, because there's this, especially here in Southern California, and there are other areas, too, around the country, but because land is at such a premium here, you can't just keep expanding out. So you have to really make decisions on what properties are worth saving and what you want to
Right.
last. And gentrification is taking place in some of these areas, as you mentioned. Do you have, aside from Venice, do you have other favorite areas in, first I'm going to ask about Southern California and then elsewhere in the world?
Well, okay, Southern California first. Well, I'm partial to Mar Vista, which is adjacent to Venice, and partially it's because I live there. I love the whole Silver Lake Echo Park area, like a little more east towards downtown. I love downtown LA. I think downtown LA is super exciting right now. Elsewhere in the world, well, I was born in Tokyo, so Tokyo still remains, to me, as exciting as LA is. Tokyo is my favorite city. I think Tokyo is, it's like New York. There are those areas of it that are also going through these rejuvenations, so every time I go back, I feel like there's a new neighborhood to discover. So some of my favorite areas are this area called Nakameguro in Tokyo. It's really a great part of town. Yeah, so.
You mentioned downtown LA. Mm-hmm. Truly remarkable to see what's happening to a part of town, a part of the world that was neglected for so long. What changed? What changed? What changed in the attitudes that led to the renaissance that it's undergoing currently?
That's a good question. I don't think it's any one thing, and there are probably policy things that I'm not exactly aware of that help this along, but I think it's just a matter of reaching a critical mass. A lot of housing was created over the last 10 years, but it still didn't seem to really catch on, but you started to see infrastructure. So there were supermarkets all of a sudden, and I think there was sort of a hipness factor also. So it wasn't just about the livability, but it's partially affordability. It was quite affordable to live in a downtown. And I think nationwide there was this sort of push to move back to downtowns. And I think part of it was also the shift from car culture, so maybe people are tired of being in traffic, and if you're not fortunate enough to live close to where you work, living downtown, working downtown, that seems really appealing, especially for young people that don't have kids yet. So I think that's a lot of it, yeah.
If there are some up and coming areas in LA that we haven't discussed, are there any jewels that people just are not aware of right now that you think are going to pop in the next 5 years, aside from Mar Vista?
Aside from Mar Vista, well, I mean, we're sitting in Culver City, but Culver City has already arrived in many ways. An area of town that I don't know inside and out very well, but the few times I go there, I'm quite amazed at how nice the neighborhoods are, is Inglewood. So I think Inglewood, for those of us who grew up in LA, when you hear Inglewood, you have sort of negative connotations of it. But I think the infrastructure there, the houses are really nice, the neighborhoods are really great, and now with the stadium being built and mass transit being developed, it has a real future. I mean, it's the West Side, it's right there, it's super convenient. Yeah, I think Inglewood is definitely a place to check out.
So it's interesting that you mentioned that, because the new stadium you're referring to, of course, is the Los Angeles Rams, who have just moved back to LA. That's where a $1 billion facility is going to be going up. And it's interesting too, because Inglewood started out, in the 50s. Inglewood was a upper middle class family neighborhood
Yeah.
that then just sort of suffered decline over
Yeah.
decades, got really, really bad. And sometimes I guess it takes a major development like that. But this stadium is probably going to, that and the fabulous Forum.
Right.
They redid the Forum
Yeah.
in Los Angeles where the Lakers played up until, I don't know, early 90s maybe.
Right.
But yeah, sometimes it just takes one or two things to flip a switch. And I agree with you. I think that neighborhood's gonna come back quickly.
Yeah.
Along with talking about building for or designing for quality of life, I wanted to know today in particular, because earlier this morning there was a major earthquake in Italy.
Right.
And I was listening to some of the reports coming in, and it's a because of all the environmental issues surrounding that part of the world. It led to just an event, right? And we're starting to see these events happen more and more. There's flooding in Louisiana. There's drier conditions where there used to be water, and there's wetter conditions where there used to be not water.
Right.
So along those lines, as in your work, as you design, how do you approach the future of environmental surroundings for the properties that you're designing? Because you're not designing them for 10 years, you're designing them for 200 years.
Right.
How do you approach that?
There's several facets to that answer. So yes, for the specific project, we're kind of building for the long run, for the future, for 200 years. Hopefully, who knows. So that's a matter of designing responsibly and using the right materials, things that are going to last. There's a term called loose fit, long life. So that's about creating spaces that are flexible enough where you can imagine that they're adapted to several uses in the life of a building. So that's kind of a philosophy that we embrace. And then there's another aspect to this question, which is just general stewardship of the environment, right? In that, just one project, it may have the materials that we choose have an impact on that project alone, but it also makes a statement as far as architecture at 10,000 feet, the bigger picture of architecture. How can we be responsible as architects? Because kind of what we do is we take nature and we impose man-made things upon it, right? So as much as we can be, as lightly as we can tread on nature, the better. So that's why, like our work, we try to embrace the landscape, create these relationships between indoors and outdoors. We're creating like these conditioned environments, but we're still trying to celebrate being part of nature and being part of the earth. And that extends not only to the experience, but also like the materials we use and how we use them.
How do you, speaking of materials, how do you source materials, new materials in particular? Because, the environment changes so quickly, and new materials are coming out all the time.
Yeah.
What's big in I guess commercial now is carbon fiber, wrapping pillars in carbon fiber for situations in earthquake-prone zones. That's, I don't think it's totally new, but it's something relatively new.
Right.
How do you source new products and materials?
Well, if you mean how do we find what's out there?
Yeah.
So we just try to keep our eyes open, and we invite people to come in and show new materials and show new ideas. As architects, we're always trying to educate ourselves. I have a really short attention span. I'll share a secret with you. So architecture is the perfect field for me because there's always something new. Every project is new, every client is new, every site is new. There are all these new products and methods and techniques out there to learn. So I think architects are naturally hungry for that sort of information gathering and trying to make the best out of, assembling all these possibilities. So I think by nature we keep abreast of all that.
Yeah. Last question I wanted to ask you was, you mentioned the offices we're in now are in Culver City. This is a great building. What is this building? What was this building? And what was the process for turning it into what it is now?
Right. Oh, great question. So this was originally the Culver City Cultural Center. It's going to be 100 years old next year. So it was essentially a dance hall for the movie industry. So we have the Culver Studios right down the street. So silent film actors would come here and kind of relax. It was a center for Culver City. These are, you're standing or sitting on chairs on the original dance floors. And then briefly, this building was housed the Culver City mortuary.
No way.
So that's the second life that it had.
So to speak.
Yeah, so to speak. And then it was abandoned for many years when the founder of the firm, Stephen Ehrlich, bought the building. I think it was in '98. And we spent a year or so converting it, reopening it up, rediscovering the trusses and the dance floor and all that, and modifying it to suit our needs. So we like to say from life to death to rebirth.
That's great.
Yeah.
This is Convo by Design. Today we've been talking with Takashi Yanai, partner in charge of the residential studio at Ehrlich Yanai Re Cheney Architects. This is really great. I want to encourage you to go follow him on his Instagram page, because it's fun. And by the way, would that be your social media of choice? Is that your favorite?
It is, yeah.
That's the way you like to communicate
Yeah,
on social
I'm
media?
a huge proponent of social media, but
Yeah.
I do have limited time.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely my chosen avenue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On Instagram, T_Yanai, YANAI, just like it sounds. Takashi, thanks for the time.
Thanks, Josh.
That was my conversation with Takashi Yanai from 2016. Up next is the conversation I had with Stephen Ehrlich from 2018.
I'm Josh Cooperman, and this is Convo by Design. We are now well into 2018, and it has already turned into one of the busiest years in Southern California design and architecture in recent memory. Between projects in place like the Pasadena Showcase House for the Arts, events like Modernism Week and the Design Bloggers Conference, and with no end in sight, we got West Week coming, LCDQ's Legends events, Dwell on Design, and the LA Design Festival on the horizon. There is a lot to see and do for those in the trade and enthusiasts alike. I want to take you back a few weeks to Modernism Week in Palm Springs. In addition to all of the mid-century modern homes we got to see, we also had a chance to tour a stunning project that was recently completed. This modern oasis in the foothills of Palm Springs called the Ridge Mountain Residence. It's a stunning piece of residential architecture from Stephen Ehrlich and the firm Ehrlich, Yanai, Re, and Cheney Architects. The home was placed strategically on a flat spot in the hills, nestled between rock outcroppings, to the point where it almost appears like the home grew out of the stone itself. To add even more visual detail, the structure is built of concrete and steel, to which a rusted patina has been applied. And right about now, you're saying, but Josh, it gets to be, 120 in the summer in Palm Springs? Is steel really the best material to use? I can't answer that. But Stephen Ehrlich does. And his response to that very question is going to surprise and delight you if you are a fan of great architecture, physics, and engineering like I am. Stephen will also tell us about some of the art in this house, pieces by light artist David Wiseman and works in reflective light and glass by artist Philip K. Smith. Then we're going to hear from project architect Megan Lawler and her experience through this 5-year journey. And since I know you want to see this, we're going to post a video from this conversation on our YouTube channel. And once you take these views in and tour the house, I think you'll see why I'm so enamored with this home. Truly a work of art in and of itself. Enjoy this conversation with architect Stephen Ehrlich and project architect Megan Lawler. Convo by Design with Stephen Ehrlich. So we're here at Modernism Week in Palm Springs, and we're visiting your latest project. Do me a favor. I can't do this justice. Tell me about the project.
Okay, this is a house for friends of mine, and it's been a very collaborative experience. I think the owners want to remain anonymous, and what's special about this project is that it is the last site in this area that is nestled up into the mountains, and all that barren, beautiful landscape is actually owned by the Agua Caliente Indian tribe. And it is completely pristine and beautiful. And the goal of this house was to very harmoniously and in balance sit lightly on the land and be part of the landscape.
So, a couple of things that I want to ask you about. And my list is so long, my time is so limited. So I'm going to ask you the questions and let you go, because I heard you explain it before, and I wanted the listeners and viewers to see this in images and hear your perspective on this. So, a couple of things. First, the exterior, which I think is amazing, and I also found it fascinating explaining the gaps between the steel and the body of the building,
right,
because I think it's amazing, and here in Palm Springs that makes a huge difference.
Right.
Also, the use of space inside, the transition in the use of space from inside to outside using the sliding doors and the massive windows, and the fact simply with the casitas how you have it wide open with a sheen covering that will close it to the outside, and the fact that there is not a bad view in the house. The way that you've structured it, the way that you've placed it, and the way that this building resides, it looks like it belongs here. So, what was the approach?
Well, that states the goal, for it to look like it belongs here. And the materials, there are really, other than glass, there are two principal materials. One is a rusted steel, and the other is cast-in-place concrete. And they're both very organic, and they're not pristine. They have their own a life unto themselves. They're not perfect materials, and that's part of what's beautiful, is that their colors and depth go in and out. The steel is actually held off of the face of the building with more or less a 1-inch air gap. So what happens is, when in the hot season, the sun hits the steel and there are gaps between the steel and it dissipates. So in a way, it's a natural idea of air conditioning. The same principle actually is happening up on the roof, because we have a plane of photovoltaic cells that are lifted about a foot off the roof itself. So the sun is hitting those photovoltaic cells, producing most of the electricity for the house, and not being allowed to penetrate and make the house hotter. So there's kind of a high-tech, primal, sustainable strategy going on here.
And then one of the things that I think is fascinating too, with the structure, with the use of space, is how the furniture storage built into the exterior of the internal walls, how you mentioned there's not a lot of paint here, and what the finishes were to that. And then there's two pieces of art which are just completely stunning. What went into the decision-making process?
Well, I want to say that the owner, Jeannie, I will just use her first name, is a major patron of the arts and has an amazing eye and is doing all the furnishings herself. She bounces ideas off of us, which we're happy about, but she's really doing that on her own. And we had a conversation that there really won't be art on the wall, but two site-specific significant art pieces are here. One is by light artist David Wiseman, and the other one is a reflective light and space artist, Philip K. Smith. And I think that it was kind of a discovery that we all were on. Jeannie and Megan, you'll talk to Megan in a moment. We all went on this journey, and it's been a 5-year journey. We're still friends. So far, we still like each other after 5 years, and the house also is a lot about balance. Like when you walk in, it's symmetrical to the pool, but then the David Wiseman piece, which has a certain softness to it, pulls your eye over to the west side. So there's a lot of ebb and flow of experience and emotion going on. I'd like to think of this as we designed with the idea of emotion as part of the ingredient.
I can see that. And then the last thing was in use of materials. It's really interesting because when I mentioned that it looks like it belongs here, the color of the stone, the exterior stone, was brought in on the color of the wood, and the exterior steel, the patina that you had applied to the patina of the house, and that's part of the reason why it just looks like it belongs here.
Right.
It seems like so much thought went into the materials themselves. How long was this project? And obviously, when you talk to Megan, it's like we're still friends. But tell me about the process.
Well, Jeannie found the land, and I think it's kind of a unique site because you're only a mile or maybe 2 miles from town, the heart of downtown Palm Springs, and yet you're up in this remote area where, as far as the eye can see, cannot be built on. And it took 5 years, basically 2 years in design and 3 years in construction. And speaking of construction, Megan, our project architect, Megan Lawler, worked really closely with me and Jeannie, and it's been part of her life for many years, and every detail, I think, has been paid attention to. Thank you for that.
Thank you for notes.
Stephen, thank you.
You're welcome.
With Megan Lawler. So, Megan, you worked with Stephen on this project.
Yes, sir.
This project, and I was gushing over it a minute ago, so forgive me. And we've got the pictures of it. It's clearly, this has been a labor of love. It's been a process along the way, but it's absolutely stunning. So, let me ask you something.
Mm-hmm.
If you could tell the Megan who started this project 5 years ago, it's like I got a couple of things I want to tell you. Here's what I want to tell you.
Actually, I think Stephen has one of my favorite quotes of the whole experience, which only happened a few weeks ago, but I wish we had kind of been saying it from the start, which is to always remember to be Archie warriors and not Archie worriers. There's... it's funny. It's a labor of love, yes, but it actually hasn't even felt like a labor because all of the details, all of the moments have been met with such reception by Jeannie as a dream client, obviously Stephen as a mentor and somebody to work with on all of these details, thinking about these things. And then frankly, even our contractors, our builders were phenomenal and met every impossible task we gave them with a smile. Not just a, sure, well, let's figure it out, but like a, yeah, that's cool. So it's been really, I think I would have just kind of, I don't know. I think I was appreciating that even along the way. So I don't know that is something I would have to go back and tell myself, but just to kind of, really enjoy it. And, but I have, so I don't know, maybe that doesn't actually answer the question.
No, it totally answers the question. And then from a site standpoint, from a material standpoint, from a client desires standpoint, from a residential project standpoint, what are some of the things that you are going to take away from this job? Because I have a theory, and every architect, every designer that I've spoken to, it's always been, there are always things that they glean from each project, and this project is so unique. What'd you learn?
Oh, what didn't I learn? Oh gosh, it's a tough one. I think what really resonated for me on this project is, which kind of is in line with the Archie Warrior thing, is that at the end of the day, every decision, every effort, every energy comes back to what best serves this experience and this house, this client. So it's kind of certain things that you kind of have to let go and work with, things are beyond your control, or how to then handle there's happy accidents throughout. Then there's the things that came out exactly as you planned, and you're so excited. This, I don't know if you noticed, but this is something Gina and I have been so excited about the last 24 hours, is where the epay deck, which is spanning across steel, it's below, it's totally open below, to the hardscape stone that's over grade against the flush infinity edge pool. The fact that all of those things so perfectly met just as we intended, and we drew them, but kind of we're never really sure if it was going to work out, and here they did. So you can focus your attention on those sorts of things, and also embrace the things that you never expected, in the way that they best serve kind of the driving goal behind the project, and which is really the experience of the space when it's all done.
Last question. What was your, and I'm totally putting you on the spot here. What right? What was your favorite happy accident?
Oh man. Favorite?
Because I'll tell you mine. This probably isn't a happy accident, but you can't project it until you walk up and see it. The stone outcropping is simply amazing. It's a sculpture piece that you didn't create, but you kind of did, because you figured out where to put the house on the land. So that's my favorite happy accident with this, and I just got here. So do you have one?
I do. I have lots of little ones. I'm just trying to think of, it's been 3 years under construction, so I forget which ones are the accidents and which ones actually were planned.
Okay, while you're thinking, I'm going to tell you my second one.
Sure.
The concrete and the formation, because of the wood and the way that it was cast, is it too sort of, it's concrete. It's not supposed to look natural, but it does. And it does within the space, so that you've got hard surfaces, you've got concrete and steel, yet it doesn't look industrial. And that's amazing.
Right. There's a warmth to it all, a real kind of like a raw and hopefully humble feeling. I think that was one of the things that we really, actually, there we go. That's my happiest accident, is that a lot of these materials, could feel very rough or abrasive to a lot of people. But I think here in this space, with this light and with this combination, they actually do the opposite. They feel really warm and textural and inviting, and this kind of very natural feeling to it. I think
you're talking about the craftsman,
and also the effect of the material itself. It's just the way that the texture really reads is actually like very warm and cozy, as opposed to this kind of austere effect.
And I did want to give a shout out to our contractor, the Van Vliets, Blair and Chris Van Vliet. They hung in there with us. They did a great job. They assembled an amazing team of craftsmen who really know their craft, and that's part of it. Even the hand of the craftsman often reveals itself as a detail in this house. So a shout out to all those people that built it.
Absolutely.
Well, clearly this was a team effort. Steve and Megan, a work of art. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for enjoying it.
Congratulations, EYRC architects. Every single one of you, from the E, the Y, the R, the C, to the associates and everyone that makes this firm so special. Congratulations on your enshrinement into the Convo by Design Icon Registry. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me and sharing your stories and your work. Thank you to my incredible partner sponsors, TimberTech, Design Hardware, and especially to the Convo by Design Icon Registry presenting partner, Pacific Sales, for your dedication to making our industry better, faster, stronger. And thank you for listening to Convo by Design each week and sharing the show with your colleagues and friends who love sublime design just like you do. Until the next episode, be well, stay focused, and rise above the chaos.